There comes a time at which you say, you call it a day of action. And this is where the investigation, quote, went overt. It all sounds very kind of cool and clandestine. And then, you go overt and now Hunter Biden knows, or whoever the target is knows the IRS is onto them. And so this happened in your case on December 8th, 2020, as I understand it, guys. And you wrote yesterday, Joe, you said that at the direction of this assistant U.S. attorney, Leslie Wolf, she was under David Weiss, who was the U.S. attorney for Delaware, I prepared an affidavit in support of a search warrant for a storage unit in Northern Virginia, because after Hunter Biden vacated his D.C. office, some items went to a storage unit in Northern Virginia, and you're looking for everything. You're looking for documents supporting the returns that were filed. You're looking for documents that might be the returns that weren't filed, drafts and so on. And you happen to know he's got this storage unit in Northern Virginia where he sent a bunch of stuff. So you prepare an affidavit in support of a search warrant for that storage unit. Leslie Wolf tells you it could take some time to get approvals. You say that is not normal. And then what happened? What happened? Because that was an important unit, you say, to search, and you never got to search it. Explain why.
Yeah, so in that situation, when we're looking to do a search warrant, you might find foreign records, you might find handwritten notes, you might find different things that can aid as evidence in your investigation. And so when we sent that up, they were like, yes, we'll work to get this approved. And then a few days later, I get a phone call that says, well, we're not going to move forward with the warrant. We are going to go ask his counsel to turn it over pursuant to the records request. And I said to her, and I'm like, we can't do that. That's not normal process. You told us that we were going to do it this way. We're relying on him to turn over the records to us, which just doesn't make any sense. And I said, well, what if we waited for 30 days? Let's get this thing approved, however long that's going to take. And if at the end of 30 days he doesn't comply with the records request, we know that he hasn't gone to that storage unit. Let's execute the search warrant. And her response was, well, think about it. And then my supervisor and our leadership had a phone call with David Weiss telling him about that plan. He agreed on the phone that, yes, that's a great idea. We'll do that. And then we come to find out that they had notified, so they being the assigned prosecutors.
Wait, can I just pause you for 1 second? Let me pause you for 1 second, Joe. Yeah. So what you're saying is, you said, all right, you're not going to let us do a search warrant, which would have been totally appropriate under the circumstances. But you said he's got a documents request. Let's monitor that storage unit for 30 days, which is his deadline to reply to our documents request, and see if he goes to it. See if he's fulfilling his duty to respond fully to our documents request and gets those documents out of that storage unit. And if he doesn't, then we'll search warrant him. And David Weiss said, that who's her boss, Leslie Wolf, let's do that. I like that plan. Okay, keep going.
And then Gary can speak to that phone call. So
yeah, so I, Specialty Ziegler told me about the situation, so I raised that to United States Attorney Weiss with a senior executive on the line with me from the IRS, and U.S. Attorney Weiss agreed with that plan, and I think it was the same day, just a few hours later, that Specialty Ziegler called me up and said, you won't believe this, but the prosecutors told the defense team about the search warrant. So
they told them about, just so you know, the records request we gave you includes the storage location that we now know about. And when that happened, I said, we don't have a seat at the table. I said to Leslie Wolf that I can't believe that was done. This is unethical. This is wrong. And her response to me was, well, are we going to have a problem working together from now on? And it was almost to that point, I can recall talking to Gary about it, that I'm like, this is just one thing after another that we're having to fight for. And it just, at the end of the day, it gets exhausting. And I don't want to sound like we're fighting.
But let me ask you, Joe, why isn't that a better way? You want what's in the storage unit. She basically went to them and said, give us what's in the storage unit or we're going to search warrant you. Like, why is that bad?
So that's relying on them to turn over the records to us. They now get to review the records, and then them being defense counsel would determine what we would get, versus us, since he's an attorney, it has to go through a filter review. So versus us reviewing the records and then the investigative team getting those files.
And how would you do it in a normal case? If you were investigating Megyn Kelly, how would you do it?
So especially for a normal case, it's least intrusive means. That's part of what goes into an analysis of getting a search warrant. And with a storage unit, there's no one living there. That is the least intrusive means of getting records other than a document request. So the fact that we went from, yes, let's do it, I will work to get to the approvals, to what happened after. And David Weiss agreed with us on it. So,
and the senior leadership at IRS agreed as well, and even sent emails that stated as such, and that they were going to that she at the time was going to go to our senior leadership and express her frustration that they weren't allowing us to do that search warrant.
This wasn't the only thing, though. I mean, it was the collective, because I know one of the other allegations you guys have made is that you were told that you were not to interview Hunter Biden's adult children or members of the Biden family at all. And you guys say that they were actually quite relevant to your investigation. You would have absolutely interviewed them had this been somebody not named Biden. So who told you that, and what do you think that was about?
Yeah, so there were, I brought up in my transcript a specific example of Valerie Owens, and we talked about going and interviewing her. There were transactions related to her. And I believe Valerie Owens is related to Joe Biden. I think it might be his sister, but we wanted to go interview her. And I can recall the AUSA Leslie Wolf or DOJ tax attorney Mark Daly telling us, no, we can't do that. So there were multiple interviews that we wanted to go do. And I mean, it can be like, at the end of the day, we were trying to expeditiously work this case, and get it done in a timely manner. And a lot of that was doing all these interviews, flying out to the West Coast. And in my testimony, I talk about that we were planning for a month to go and do these interviews on the West Coast of some of the escorts. And those interviews were held up because not U.S. Attorney David Weiss, but DOJ tax senior management hadn't reviewed the records requests to allow me to go out to do those interviews. And it just didn't make sense. Why are they, I've never had in my career to where leadership in DOJ tax was reviewing records requests for escorts, but just didn't make any sense.
It's beneath their pay grade. I would imagine they'd be happy to pawn off those specific requests on you and just make sure that they get served so that you get your documents in advance of your interviews. But here again, you were slow-rolled, you were slowed down, and then ultimately they told you couldn't do the interviews at the time you wanted to do them. And back on the subject of Hunter's children, you said that there were expenses paid for the adult kids as well as potential credit card expenditures and Venmo payments that were deducted on 1 year of his tax returns, and that Leslie Wolf allegedly said to you in October of 21 that it will get us in hot water if we interview the president's grandchildren. I mean, these are not toddlers; these are adult children of Hunters. So she was worried. What does she mean? It'll get us in hot water.
So, yeah, I mean, so there was the Columbia University tuition payment that was deducted directly on the tax return. So in any normal course of our investigation, if there are relatives either receiving payments or there are relatives receiving funds from a taxpayer that might be deducted on a tax return, normal course of action is to go and talk to those people. That is what we would do in our normal job. And the fact that they were saying that you can't go and interview these people, we'll just rely on these other facts. I mean, that just didn't make any sense. And I understand that there's political sensitivities to, they are the grandchildren, they might have Secret Service protection details. So there are certain things that go into that, but to have an outright no, we don't think you should go do that, or we're not going to approve you going to do that, that didn't make any sense.
This summer, big box retailers are seeking a massive big government handout from Congress paid for by consumers, smaller financial institutions, community banks, and local credit unions. That's according to the Electronics Payment Coalition, a sponsor of today's episode. It's called the Credit Card Competition Act, aka the Big Box Bill. Mega retailers are in favor of it, but the Electronics Payment Coalition is not. They say this big box bill would actually transfer billions from consumers to retailers through eliminating popular credit card rewards programs, weakening cybersecurity protections, and reducing overall access to credit for people who need it most. You can visit stopthebigboxbaitandSwitch.com to learn more. That's stopthebigboxbaitandSwitch.com. The link is in the description. Learn more, and if you want to help them, tell your legislators to stand up to the retail giants and to support consumers and small businesses. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.